and welcome to this week's episode of Hashtag Leadership, What's on Your Mind. Remember, we're a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey and help you step forward by bringing amazing guests and experts in their field. So today we are speaking to an expert in the field of leadership. It's David Marquet. How are you doing, David? You okay?
Yeah, good. I'm surviving. 2021,
Good, yes.
yay.
So you're joining me from over in Florida, so thank you for joining me. So let me tell you a quick story. I'm really excited about David to come on today because when I left the military, it was the first audio book that I listened to because I wanted to continue my journey of learning. And it was just a fantastic book, Turn the Ship Around. It's story-based and it's very, I just couldn't stop keep listening to it. So David, for the people who don't know you, please introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll go on to leadership questions as I hit the 20-minute timer.
Yeah, thanks. So my story is I was a geeky, awkward kid who was growing up in the United States in the 70s, decided to join the submarine force with the hope of becoming a submarine commander. And amazing, I became a nuclear submarine commander. And my journey along that path took me in a quite unexpected, but ridiculously rewarding and powerful way. And I've sort of become the zealot about leadership. And I think what's going on is there are two things. One is your role changes as you move up through an organization. But the second thing is we're in the midst of this big sea change in how humans interact. And it's fundamentally, it's away from this industrial age model and to a newer model. And there are specific things about why the industrial age organization was designed the way it was to achieve what they needed to do, which are no longer relevant or helpful.
Amazing. And it'll be great. So our first question we start with is very much on your radar of leadership. So when you hear the term leadership, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Yeah, so I've got good and bad images coming to mind. I've got the thing that we're trying to move away from, which is the boss standing there telling people what to do. And unfortunately, I think this is what a lot of people imagine when they think of the word leadership. Now, I am trying to dissociate the word leadership with the idea of telling people what to do. When you tell a team what to do, you're maybe an achiever, an accomplisher, but I'm no longer associating that with the word leadership. Leadership to me means, what does a team do without you? What have you done to design? In other words, if you're a decision maker, you're making content decisions, launch a product, don't launch a product, add a feature, don't add a feature. That's not leadership. That's about product management. When you design a team of people who can make consistently effective decisions about launch a product, don't launch the product, add this feature, don't add this feature, interview the client, don't interview. Now that's leadership. Leadership is always about other people. And I think we've got some society issues about what the word leadership means.
Yeah, amazing. So just focusing on you, and I love your story that you share, and we'll dig into that a little bit more about the book specifically. But whether it's on reflection or whether you were aware of it at the time, where do you think your leadership journey started?
So I told you I was this geeky kid growing up in the 70s. This is me actually right here. This is the
amazing
math. Yes, the math team from my high school back in 1977. But we were in this Cold War and it was really scary. And if you're an introvert, it's scary to go in the military, but submarines hide from people. So that's where they all kind of go there. And my journey started with this book. I show up at the Naval Academy. It's this big, impressive building, big, impressive campus, steeped in history. And the US government hands me this book and says, leadership can be defined as directing the thoughts, plans, and actions of others so as to obtain and command their obedience, confidence, respect, and their loyal cooperation. Well, who was I to question that? I mean, it was the picture I'd seen in movies. It was basically the story I'd read in books. I was a big reader, history books. And this was Patton, this was Napoleon. Maybe not so much Eisenhower or Marshall, but this kind of resonated with me. And I said, okay, great, I can do that. I'll go out, be really smart, figure out what the team needs to do, and then bend them to my will. And I was successful at that. So the Navy promoted me and they said, oh, you can be a submarine commander 15 years later. So I was like, oh, great. And at the very last minute, they said, no, you can't, you're not going to go to the submarine you've been training for. You're going to go to this one of the newest submarines. You've never been on the submarine. And oh, by the way, the reason you're going there is because the existing captain has quit abruptly a year early. And oh, by the way, it's the worst performing submarine in the fleet and it has the worst morale. Have a nice day. And I was literally just shooken up. And the model is, and I tried to tell people what to do, but it didn't work because I didn't know the answers. Typically we say, okay, well, if you know the answer, tell people what to do. If you don't know the answer, don't tell them what to do, ask the team. But in this model, the idea was so deeply ingrained of telling people what to do, and they wanted to be told what to do. It was so comforting to be told what to do. And so we made a deal that I would never give an order as a submarine captain. And this was a watershed event. And it meant that they would have to come to me and say, instead of saying, well, I'd like permission, tell me what to do, or what should I do? Or even I'd like permission. Because if they say to me, I'd like permission to load a torpedo, and I say, load the torpedo, I just told them to load the torpedo. So we had to change the words. And I said, don't say that. Say, tell me what you intend to do. And if I don't stop you, you're doing it. Captain, I intend to load a torpedo. I intend to load this torpedo into that tube tomorrow at 10 a.m. And if I don't, I can ask questions and I can say no. But if I don't say no, you already have permission. And this was fundamentally revolutionary and earth-changing. And the model of my journey, I chart in terms of these two directions, knowing and telling. And the idea is if I know the answer, I'm going to tell the team what to do. That's what leadership is. Isn't that what we aspire to? That's certainly what that's what this definition was all about. And so I always said, well, and I felt good as the guy telling the team what to do. Now, the team didn't feel so satisfied because it wasn't their decisions. We might pretend that it was, but it wasn't. And so what happens when I went to the Santa Fe, I didn't know anymore, but I tried to tell. It didn't work. And I realized I couldn't tell. I shouldn't tell. And then eventually I learned the ship. And now here's the kicker. When I learned the ship, I could have gone back to telling people what to do. But I'd seen how powerful it was not to tell people what to do. That even though by the end of my 3-year tour, almost always knew the answer, I still resisted telling people what to do. This is the magic. Most times we operate in this axis. If I know it, I tell it. If I don't know it, I don't tell it. Why? If I know it, I tell it. Why? Because I'm making progress. I'm getting stuff done. I'm doing stuff. There's a over bias towards action and doing. But knowing and not telling the team, hey, what do you guys think? What would you do? If you were me, what would you do? Hey, why don't you pretend like you're in charge today? How would you handle it? Now you're activating thinking and learning. And there's always these two dimensionals. There's what are we going to get done and what are we going to learn? And almost every organization that we've interacted with is over biased towards getting stuff done. You look at any organization's quarterly goals, look at someone's personal annual review. It's all about, this is what we did, this is what we did. We sold these many widgets, we built this many. It's not about, we learned this. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have a learning dimension, then you're a couple things. One, you're not getting better. Two, the organization has a certain fragility because our sense of already being successful is linked to achieving the outcomes from getting stuff done. We can do all the right things, and we can practice dribbling the ball and then still lose the game. And what you want to do is, if you say, well, what did we learn? It tends to mitigate that downer feeling from, we didn't achieve what we wanted, but we did learn a lot. So the next round, we're going to be better off.
Reframes and changes that focus, doesn't it? And so I'd like to ask you about, you mentioned then about transitioning into working with corporates, working with businesses. And obviously that's what I'm doing, transitioning from the military into working into the, I say out of the military bubble, into the real world. What has been your experiences of businesses taking that type of thinking on board? And maybe tell us some of the barriers that people come across.
It's been great. It's amazing. By the way, it's much more similar than most people think. My experience. People say, oh, in the military, you just order people what to do. How easy is that? Oh, sure. Yeah. So I can just tell someone to just think better, create smarter, be more innovative. I just order that. Come up with the next Amazon. I just gave that order.
Yeah.
It's such a short-sighted, idiotic perspective. It was maybe relevant when what we did was very simple physical tasks. I mean, I can order people to pick something up or march in step, but you can't, the most important things, which is going on up here, you can't order people to do that. It makes no sense. So it's all about getting people to think. It's about creating environments where people can think. So I was at a bank in Scandinavia, and I got one person say, oh, we're not unlike you Americans, we're really not hierarchical here. Meantime, I'm having a conversation with someone who says, oh yeah, I'm a level 4, blah, blah, blah. That person's a level 3, they're a level 5. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, levels. Like, what? No. Yeah, well, the CEO's level 1, C-suite's level 2, senior vice president level 3, 4. I'm like, you want to talk about hierarchy? You guys are labeling yourselves by these levels. But if you do it, the same fundamental things happen. How do we get our people to think, and how do we make it easy for them to express their thoughts? And we do so many things all the time. We say, oh, so is it going to work? Binary question. And it does, and it's like, if I say yes and it didn't work, that's bad. And I don't want to say no, because I do think there is a probability that that's going to work. And so we put people in boxes, and then like, gee, I don't know. As opposed to, well, what's the probability that it'll work? What's your sense that it'll work? How likely is it going to work? And it's our fault because we ask the wrong questions. And we say things like, so we've done all the testing and the product's going to get launched next week, right? What is that right? That right is a signal. Don't say anything different. It's a signal you better not disagree with me, as opposed to, hey, what do you think about product launch next week? Or, hey, product launch is scheduled for next week. How could it go wrong? It's socially difficult to throw up barriers and say something that you think no one else seems to see this pending danger that I'm seeing. We need people to say that. The way you do it is not by ordering people to say it. The way you do it is by asking the questions and make it easy for them to say it. Hey, if this goes wrong in 6 months, what would be the most likely reason? Oh, okay. Now you can do something about it.
Yeah, awesome. I love that, because it goes back into saying about that, creating that environment where you've got empowered people around you, and you don't create that by ordering people what to do, like you mentioned. I'd love to pick up on something that you've reminded me about that is very interesting in your story, which a lot of people can probably resonate with. And you mentioned about being an introvert. And just share a little bit about your thoughts on that, because when you think that label, we've called it that label of leadership, people think it's the people who shout the loudest, who could hold a room. What are your thoughts on that, and some sort of inspiration and some of the things that people can, as introverts, lead from? I think I've heard somebody say lead from the shadows, and lead from having that skill set of being an introvert and having that sort of ability, because it's a superpower. Well, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not against extroverts. It's kind of like, so here's what I think. You imagine an organism like a human or a jellyfish. So a human has got soft tissue and then bones. The bones give the structure and the soft tissue forms around it. Now a jellyfish has no bones, there's no structure. So it's just all soft tissue. So what happens is, in a lot of organizations, we don't build the structure. The leader hasn't thoughtfully created the structure. When I say structure, I mean the way we run meetings, the way we talk to each other, who owns what, and are the boundaries between those two things. Why? Because if I don't have a structure, in other words, I have a factory and I'm building two things. I'm making cars, and I'm making the decisions. The other output for the factory are the decisions that help us make the cars better, decide what cars to make, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's two outputs to our factory. Most people say, well, I'm going to focus, if I haven't built the factory to create quality cars, and I need an inspector at the end, I got to manage every car. Most organizations have gotten past that, but they haven't got past the other dimension. So we haven't built a quality decision-making factory. So at the end of the day, every decision I have to get involved with. I'm basically like the inspector checking the paint at the end of the car. So I have to say, oh yeah, no, hey, do this, no, do that. I'm the decision maker. I haven't built the decision-making process into the factory. Why? Because it's so psychologically addictive. All day long, people need me. And at the end of the day, I go, oh yeah, I made all these decisions. Now it's debilitating to the team. And oh, by the way, it's also the prescription for irresponsibility. If you look at corporate scandals like the Volkswagen thing, those things always happen in an organization where there's a high adherence to do what you're told. So that would appeal to someone who wants a lot of attention. Yeah. Forget the structure. And a lot of the early stage entrepreneurs fall in this category, not because they're evil, but because they just started the company and they're so like, I gotta mess. Oh, I actually want a free for all. But now you're making every decision. You have, as opposed to my approach. I didn't need that. I didn't want that. Frankly, I didn't have enough energy for it. So I said, I'm going to build a decision-making factory. I'm going to get myself out of the decision-making process. My job, and I was very forceful about this. So you could say, well, you let people do whatever you want. Not really. If they said, well, load torpedo, but I knew when if they came up to me and said, I intend to load a torpedo or submerge the submarine or change the position and we're going to move north, that it was the outcome of a process and a structure which I had deliberately designed. And again, what I mean, how was the meeting run? Was the meeting run in a way that all the dissenting views came out on the table? Or was the meeting run in a way that we simply imprinted one dominant person's view on the team and everyone sort of grudgingly went along? And so when you create the right structures, you can then free yourself of micromanaging every decision. It's scalable and sustainable. And so this was my approach. Basically, I was just lazy. I don't have time and energy to run around. I mean, literally, I was just lazy.
Yeah.
Like I can't run around and manage all this stuff. I remember watching another submarine commander. When I was young, I got the chance to watch another submarine go through a major inspection. And the captain was just, it was like a 4-day inspection. I think he slept maybe 5 hours in the whole, I couldn't even keep up with him. And this guy was 40 years old and I was 30. And I was like, there's no way I can do that. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And the inspection team was applauding. Oh, the captain's, the phrase they used was the captain's fingerprints are on everything. And I'm like, and this was a good thing. But remember the definition that I showed you.
Yeah.
Okay. It's exactly this definition. There's nothing evil about this
that.
person. He was doing exactly what he was being trained to do. I just was like, I'm too lazy for that. I don't have enough energy for that. I know I get cranky if if I've only slept 5 hours in 4 days. There's no way I'm going to be functioning. And I got to get out of it.
I'm going to, in the links below, I'm going to put your amazing YouTube about the processes, because I love the bit where it just blatantly says that why have one decision maker when you could have 100 plus decision makers?
Exactly.
And the simplicity of the eye-opening reach of that is brilliant, and that's what we want to get to. So David, we've got 1 minute left, so I just want, if people are listening to this podcast who want to level up their leadership journey, what's the one thing you'd get them to think about, to do, to become more aware of? What would you say?
Start your questions with the word how. Or maybe what. There's a bunch of things I could tell you, but that the whole thing, if you do this, it tricks you in a couple of other things, which I think are really important. One, you have to pay attention to your language. 2, I want you to notice the response of your team. 3, it invites people to respond in a probabilistic way. How sure are you? What's the likelihood that that assumption will come true? 80%. Here's a new idea. How confident are you in it? 20%. But if it hits, it hits big. Like, people buy lottery tickets. Like, what's the likelihood the lottery ticket's going to hit? 1 in 10 million. But they're still buying them. But we go to work and we go, what's the likelihood that this will this work? Well, I think it's like 80% chance of working. Well, we're not going to do that. What?
I love that.
Start the questions with the word how. There'll always be better questions that'll lead you on a journey of growth and an awareness of your language. And and you'll start to question, why do I say what I say? Why do I add a little right at the end? Why do I say, does that make sense? As opposed to, how could this be wrong?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed that. If you're listening to us on our podcast, on your podcast provider, please make sure you follow us, and please make sure you comment and let us know what your takeaways are from this episode. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, and there'll be another great guest coming out at 6 a.m. next Wednesday. So David, thank you so much for your time. I highly recommend you go and check out Turn the Ship Around, whether you listen to it on Audible or you get it in paper copy. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next week, guys. Take care. Bye.